There is a truth no one ever tells you, that your life does not change when you learn something new, but when you become someone who is no longer controlled by emotions, no longer swept away by the environment, and no longer running on the old version of yourself. If you have ever felt that you could be stronger, calmer, and deeper, but could not understand why you kept getting stuck, then stay, because this is the journey that leads you out of the noise and into the version of yourself that carries real weight, the version life cannot ignore. The world today is so saturated with voices that people gradually confuse talking about a goal with actually taking steps to achieve that goal. Everywhere there are declarations, promises, and affirmations about change and success, yet very few real results appear. Surrounding us are conversations full of intentions but lacking action. Plans overflowing with inspiration at the beginning but quickly fading when confronted with real pressure. People spend too much time talking about the path they want to walk, but not enough silence to look within and see whether they are truly ready to take the step. When noise becomes a habit, the mind loses its sharpness. When words become easy, discipline becomes rare. And when people pour their energy into performing instead of building, life begins to slip out of the orbit they desire. Day by day, they are pulled into meaningless conversations, small reactions, and invisible comparisons, making them forget that true strength does not come from being seen, but from being steady enough not to need to say everything out loud. Silence is not weakness. Silence is where willpower is sharpened, where the mind is reorganized, where people see clearly what they truly want and what they need to release. The louder the world becomes, the more rare and precious the power of silence becomes. In silence, people learn to face the truth about themselves. They see the habits that hold them back, the fears that make them hesitate, the reactions that drain their energy. They see clearly the gap between who they are and who they want to become. And in that very gap, the real journey of transformation begins. Silence gives people the opportunity to remove distraction and return to their core. It creates a depth that noise can never bring. It slows them down just enough to understand that results are the only voice that truly lasts. When someone enters this journey, they do not seek attention. They seek inner transformation. They are not trying to prove anything to the world. They simply want to become someone they can respect every time they look at themselves in the mirror. Silent power does not create explosions, but it creates quiet, steady change. And when that change gathers enough force, an entire life begins to shift. This is the foundation that opens the path to mastering emotions, mastering energy, and mastering presence. The journey that leads people from noise back to their true inner power. In modern life, people do not grow weak because of great storms, but because of small wins repeated day after day. A single tactless comment can drag someone's mood down for hours. A message arriving at the wrong time can shift the rhythm of an entire day. An unfriendly glance can trigger doubt about one's own worth. Those seemingly harmless little things are the constant needles touching the spirit, draining energy without people realizing it. Unconscious reactions are the silent thieves that weaken inner power bit by bit. People often think exhaustion comes from major pressure, but in truth, most energy is consumed by minor reactions. When someone enters a new day with clear goals but allows small external triggers to take control, they lose command of their life before the day truly begins. Unconscious reactions pull the mind toward external forces instead of allowing it to be guided by purpose. In each of those moments, people hand over authority of their emotions to the environment, turning themselves into victims of circumstances rather than leaders of their own lives. The most dangerous part does not lie in the outburst of emotion but in the loss of choice. In reaction, they lose the space between stimulus and action, the very space that contains freedom and courage. When that space disappears, courage disappears with it. One of the heaviest costs is the silent erosion of self-respect. When people look back at moments they became angry over something trivial, worried excessively about something that had not happened, or felt hurt by a careless comment, they feel they are no longer as strong as the image they hope to build. Each uncontrolled reaction makes them feel further from the steady version they hold in their mind. Self-respect does not vanish at once. It erodes gradually, like a stone worn down by continuously flowing water. When people no longer trust their ability to stay calm, they struggle to earn respect from others. Credibility is affected not because they lack skill, but because they lack stability. In work, stability is the foundation of trust. People can forgive mistakes, but they cannot rely on someone easily swept away by emotion. No one assigns important responsibilities to a person who loses rhythm under the slightest pressure. Uncontrolled reactions overshadow talent and make others notice instability before seeing true value. In relationships, unconscious reactions create layers of dense misunderstanding. When someone reacts, they no longer hear what is being said, they only hear the noise inside themselves. They view the other person as an emotional threat instead of a human being with their own needs and fears. Reactions turn dialogue into battle, disagreement into attack, small distance into deep fracture. Many relationships do not break because of lack of love, but because of lack of emotional maturity to move through moments of emotional volatility. Constant defensiveness is another cost of reacting. When people become accustomed to reacting, they begin to live in a state of excessive vigilance. Every signal is interpreted as judgment. Every small change is seen as danger. The nervous system becomes tense. The mind contracts. Creativity is suffocated. Instead of living with inner freedom, they live in a loop of tension. The more they defend, the more they lose natural strength. Because true strength does not come from building walls, but from standing firm even when there are no walls. Continuous reaction also makes people forget their long-term goals. Every decision becomes influenced by temporary emotion rather than vision. The path of growth is interrupted by impulsive moments. An important plan is abandoned simply because the mood is unstable. A good opportunity is missed because of anxious emotion. When looking back, people cannot understand why they have not progressed far, while the answer lies in the small reactions they never mastered. And the final cost of reacting is losing the ability to live with intention. When people react, they do not act from courage, but from survival instinct. They do not choose the path, they merely react to the path. Life becomes a chain of consecutive reactions instead of a journey guided by clarity and inner strength. When people truly understand this invisible cost, they see that real power does not begin with trying to control the outside world, but at the moment they learn to pause before reacting. A single moment of pause is enough to change the direction of an entire day. And when that moment is repeated enough, it can change the direction of an entire life. The loss of emotional control is not a sign of weakness, but the natural result of a brain that has not yet been trained. People often blame themselves for impulsive reactions, excessive anxiety, or moments of losing their calm. But the truth is, they are simply operating under ancient mechanisms their brain was programmed with thousands of years ago. The human brain was designed for survival, not for calmness or growth. When any signal appears, no matter how small, the brain prioritizes processing it as a potential threat. This is why emotions erupt before logic has a chance to participate. The part responsible for this rapid response is the amygdala, located deep within the brain. It functions like an alarm bell, always ready to activate. Just one unpleasant expression from someone, one unfavorable comment, or one unexpected change at work is enough to make this alarm sound instantly. The body reacts by increasing heart rate, tightening muscles, shortening breath, and focusing all attention on the imagined threat. In that moment, people no longer see things with calmness, but through magnified fear. What makes this loop concerning is that the amygdala reacts faster than the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logic and decision-making. This means emotions always arrive before thoughts. Once a person enters an emotional reaction, logic becomes the one running behind, trying to clean up the aftermath rather than preventing it. This loop traps people in repetitive emotional patterns. Each time they react unconsciously, the neural pathways in the brain strengthen. The brain memorizes the reaction and treats it as the safest response, even if it causes exhaustion or damage. The more it repeats, the more the brain treats the reaction as default. This is why people explode in anger the same way, worry in the same way, and get triggered by the same things that bothered them before. What makes self-development difficult is not the complexity of the methods, but the inertia of neural habits. And neural habits only change when a person creates a pause between emotion and action. When people understand this mechanism, they will see they are not broken. They are simply running an automatic system that has not yet been rewired. They are not failing at staying calm. They just have not yet built strong enough neural pathways to replace the old ones. Change begins when they understand that emotions are not enemies, but survival signals overreacting. The amygdala does not want to harm anyone. It only wants to protect its owner. But because it has only one job, detecting danger, it sees danger everywhere, even in a last-minute email from a boss, a conversation with unclear meaning, or a slightly unusual facial expression. When people begin seeing emotions as signals rather than truths, they regain inner distance. That distance is where logic returns. But logic can only intervene when awareness is present. Awareness is the first step to breaking the emotional loop. When a person observes emotions instead of reacting to them, they open a new doorway in the brain. In that moment of observation, the prefrontal cortex begins functioning again. Breath stabilizes, perception expands, and emotions shift from explosive to manageable. But awareness alone is not enough. The brain needs time to rebuild its system. A reaction repeated for many years cannot disappear in a few days. The brain needs intentional repetition to form new neural pathways. When a person consistently pauses before reacting, observes their body, identifies emotions, reframes their interpretation, and chooses a calm response, the brain records this new pattern. Every correct repetition strengthens the new pathway, and eventually, what was once the hardest thing becomes the most natural. This is the moment when people no longer battle their emotions but rise above them. They are not swept away by anger or fear. They see them come and go without letting them determine their direction. When a person understands the brain's mechanism, they see that emotional mastery is not a fight against themselves, but a rebuilding of themselves. No one can become strong without understanding the structure of strength. And inner strength begins with knowing that emotions come before logic, but the final action always belongs to choice. That moment of choice is where inner power is built. Inner power does not come from suppressing emotions, but from learning to guide them. A person does not need to be emotionless to be calm. They only need to understand that emotions are waves while they are the ocean. Once they recognize this, strong waves no longer frighten them. They simply focus on standing firm in the deepest waters of their own being. And that is when the old emotional loops begin to dissolve. Emotional maturity does not happen in a single moment but forms through stages, like a journey climbing from the shadowed parts of oneself into the light. When people do not understand the differences between these levels, they often expect themselves to be calm immediately and then feel disappointed when they cannot. But when they understand the structure of the 4 levels of emotional mastery, the path ahead becomes clearer, more orderly, and easier to attain. The first level is unconscious reaction, where people operate from survival mode. At this level, emotions lead, and reasoning is almost absent. A single comment hitting the right weakness can make them explode instantly. A small conflict can cause them to overthink the entire day. A minor mistake can make them blame themselves without stopping. At this level, everything happens too fast and too intensely. People do not choose their reactions, they are chosen by them. This is where most people remain stuck for much of their life. The second level is conscious reaction. This is the first and most crucial transition. At this level, people still react, but they know they are reacting. They know they are angry but cannot yet stop it. Know they are worried but cannot yet control it. Know they are saying something hurtful but cannot yet rise above the emotion. However, the important point is that they are now observing themselves. The moment they recognize they are reacting is the doorway to the next level. No one can skip this level because it is the foundation for all deeper change. The third level is conscious response. This is the moment people begin choosing instead of reacting. They pause for a beat before saying something that could cause harm. They take a breath before making a decision. They observe the emotion before letting it dictate their action. At this level, people create space between stimulus and behavior, and that space is where courage and wisdom operate. This is the level where life changes most visibly. Relationships become more stable, work becomes smoother, and respect from others increases due to the consistency in their presence. The fourth level is emotional alchemy, the rarest yet most powerful level. This is the state in which people not only control emotion, but transform it into strength. Anger becomes boundaries, fear becomes thorough preparation, sadness becomes depth, disappointment becomes motivation to grow. At this level, emotion is no longer the enemy but the fuel. People do not avoid emotion but learn to use it to expand their inner power. Those at this level are not people with fewer emotions but people who are not ruled by them. They understand that every emotion carries a message, and their job is to decode it rather than run from it. The journey through these four levels is not linear. A person may remain at level 3 most of the time and suddenly fall back to level 1 when exhausted or when encountering a situation that touches an old wound. This is not failure. It is simply a reminder that they are human. What matters is not the level they are currently in, but their awareness of the path and their willingness to continue walking it. The truth is, no one wakes up one morning and becomes a master of emotion. They become such a person through hundreds of moments of pausing, hundreds of times choosing calm over impulsiveness, hundreds of times looking inward instead of being swept away by what is outside. What shapes inner strength is not the intensity of one moment, but the repetition of many small ones. And it is this very journey that creates sustainable transformation. When they understand these four levels, people begin to see emotion more realistically. They do not expect themselves to be unshaken by every difficulty. They only expect themselves to be better than before. They know that each time they pause for 1 second before reacting, they have won against themselves. Each time they shift the way they look at a situation, they build a new neural pathway. Each time they move through an emotion instead of letting it pull them down, they expand their inner power, and each small victory accumulates into a new identity, a more grounded identity, an identity capable of standing in stillness amid noise, an identity not drowned by emotional waves, but using them to understand themselves more deeply. This is where the journey out of automatic reaction begins, creating real change. Because when people learn to observe emotion and choose response instead of reaction, they are not just changing behavior, they are restructuring their brain. That restructuring does not happen in a single moment, but unfolds day by day, week by week, month by month. And at some point, when they face the same situation that once destabilized them, they realize they are standing steady without effort. That is the moment they know they have stepped into a different version of themselves. The difference between someone constantly swept away by emotions and someone who masters their life does not lie in talent or circumstances, but in the ability to pause at the right moment. This seemingly small pause is the dividing line between unconscious reaction and conscious response. It is like the moment when the door of emotion is about to burst open, but its owner places a hand on the doorknob and says, "Slow down." In a world full of stimulation, people are pulled into the speed of everything around them until their inner rhythm no longer belongs to them. A message arrives and they respond immediately. A harsh comment comes and they react instantly. An unexpected problem appears and they rush into tension. Everything happens so fast that they can no longer distinguish between who they truly are and the automatic reflexes of the brain. The pause method does not exist to suppress emotion but to create space for wisdom to function. When people pause, they do not deny emotion. They simply delay action long enough for the emotion to settle to a level where it can be directed instead of erupting. Pausing opens the door to the art of observation. In that silent moment, people begin to see what they have never seen before. They notice their heartbeat rising. They notice their hand tightening slightly. They notice their thoughts sliding toward a negative direction. These things were always happening, but they had never looked at them. Pausing is the light illuminating the entire stage of the inner world. When there is light, everything becomes clearer, and with clarity comes choice. A person cannot choose how to respond if they do not know what they are feeling. Pausing brings them back to themselves before the world can pull them away. The essence of the pause method lies in 4 simple yet powerful steps. The first step is stop. Stop does not mean stopping life, but stopping the reflex. It is the moment when people hold themselves back, so emotion does not take over. Just a few seconds of stopping is enough for the amygdala to reduce its alarm signals and create the space needed for the prefrontal cortex to return to work. The second step is breathe. Breath is the key that connects body and mind. When people are stressed, they breathe shallowly, making the body believe a real threat exists. When they breathe deeply, the body receives a signal of safety, and the nervous system lowers its alert level. A single deep breath can change the entire state. The third step is observe. This step helps people see clearly what is happening inside. They do not run from emotion nor let it lead. They simply observe it as if watching a wave rise on the surface of the ocean. Observation helps them see that emotion is merely a temporary phenomenon, not their identity. Observation breaks the illusion that emotion is the only truth. The fourth step is continue. This is the moment when people choose their action. Action is no longer driven by erupting emotion, but by the clarity that has formed through the first 3 steps. They can say what needs to be said without hurting anyone. They can make decisions without being led by fear. They can remain calm, even when the situation has not yet changed. This method is not a coping mechanism, but a restructuring practice. Every time they pause, the brain learns a new pattern. Every time they observe emotion instead of acting from emotion, old neural pathways weaken and new pathways strengthen. And when repetition lasts long enough, pausing becomes a natural part of how a person operates. Those who practice this method do not become emotionless. On the contrary, they become deeper. They are no longer pulled by small emotions, but look through them to see the core of the issue. They respond with clarity instead of reacting with impulse. These individuals do not speak much, but every word carries weight. They do not act quickly, but every action carries impact. Their calmness is not accidental, but the result of hundreds of moments pausing to step out of the emotional whirlpool. And this creates a kind of strength others can feel the moment they walk into a room. The pause method also frees people from the loop of inner exhaustion. When they pause, they are no longer forced to react to everything. They choose what is worth spending energy on and what is not. This discernment is the core of wisdom. No one is strong because they react to everything. They are strong because they respond to what is worthy. The truth is that people do not need to control the world to feel at peace. They only need to control the moment before they react. That moment is small, but its power is large enough to redirect an entire day. And when repeated enough, it can redirect an entire life. The ability to master emotions does not lie only in pausing or observing, but also in the art of reframing perception, a skill that helps people view the same situation through a different lens and instantly transform the quality of their emotions. Reframing does not make problems disappear, but it removes the problem's ability to control the person. In life, it is not the event that exhausts people, but the meaning they attach to that event. When someone believes that a harsh comment means they are not respected, they become angry. But if they believe the other person is under pressure and accidentally misdirected it, their emotion becomes lighter. When they believe an obstacle is a sign of failure, they despair. But if they see it as a test for someone about to step into a new level of growth, determination emerges. Meaning creates emotion, and emotion determines action. Therefore, simply changing the meaning will change the emotion. This is the power of reframing perception. But reframing is not coloring reality with fake positivity. Reframing means seeing the truth from a wider and deeper angle, so one is no longer trapped in the narrow viewpoint created by the initial emotion. Emotion often narrows the field of vision, like a dark room lit by a single small lamp shining on the most threatening corner. Reframing turns on more lights to show that the room is larger and has more paths. A person may feel attacked when someone asks a difficult question, but through reframing, they realize the question is simply concern or a need for clarification. This shift helps them stay calm and respond with clarity instead of defensiveness. A person may feel like a failure for not meeting a deadline, but through reframing, they understand that goals exist not to be completed instantly, but to pull them forward day by day. Progress is defined not by speed, but by direction. When they see that, pressure decreases and motivation returns. Reframing perception also frees people from the loop of false assumptions. Many negative emotions come from stories created in the mind without evidence. They think others dislike them. They think a small mistake will lead to major consequences. They think they are not good enough to seize an opportunity. These self-created stories become distorted lenses that make them view life with defensiveness and fear. Reframing helps them ask themselves whether this is truth or imagination. When they face truth, they see most of their fears are illusions built from past experiences and old patterns. Through reframing, they stop fighting illusions and start dissolving them. A change in perception creates a change in emotion, and a change in emotion opens the door for behavioral change. Emotions that once held them back now become forces that push them forward. When a person learns to reframe fear, they stop avoiding challenges and see them as opportunities to expand their courage. When they reframe criticism, they stop feeling wounded and see it as feedback for self-improvement. When they reframe failure, they stop seeing it as an ending and see it as preparation for the stronger version of themselves being formed. Reframing perception does not only reduce negative emotions but transforms them into valuable energy. Anger can become motivation to build boundaries. Sadness can become depth for connection. Fear can become thorough preparation. Disappointment can become the foundation of perseverance. When people understand that emotion is merely raw material, they no longer fear it. What they need is the skill to refine that material into energy that supports their growth. Reframing is the tool that makes this possible. Reframing also brings a greater benefit that few recognize. It opens the door to inner freedom. When people no longer depend on temporary emotions, they become more stable, more clear-minded, and less affected by external turbulence. They no longer allow the world to dictate their mood. They carry within themselves a spacious inner world large enough to hold imperfection without losing peace. Reframing is the first step toward freedom on the path of mastering inner power. When they realize that emotion is not the final truth, and that they have the right to reinterpret anything at any moment, they step out of the invisible cage they never knew they were trapped in. And once a person knows how to reframe perception, the external world no longer has the power to break them the way it once did. They do not become immune to difficulty, but they become someone who can define each difficulty in a way that makes them stronger. A steady life is not built on moments of brilliance, but on a stable emotional foundation repeated day after day. This stability does not come from luck or inherent personality, but from how people manage the factors that either nourish or weaken their inner strength. What makes people easy to shake is not major events, but the emotional foundation that was already weak. When the foundation is weak, even a small change can throw them off balance. When the foundation is strong, even storms cannot make them collapse. Therefore, the journey of emotional mastery cannot skip the step of building a stable emotional foundation. This foundation is not created in stressful situations, but in everyday life where small habits quietly accumulate into strength or collapse. Emotional foundation begins with how people take care of their bodies. An exhausted body cannot support a clear mind. When people lack sleep, eat irregularly, and rarely move, the body enters a state of low energy. When energy is low, emotions become fragile. A single word can make them flare up. A small issue can make them overly tense. A tired body is fertile ground for unconscious reactions. When the body is healthy, the mind has a foundation to operate steadily. Breathing becomes smoother, thinking becomes clearer, emotions become less intense. And when the body has enough energy, people finally have the strength to use subtle methods like pausing, observing, or reframing perception. Creating emotional stability also lies in how people manage mental energy. Each day, they have a limited amount of energy, and every emotional reaction consumes a portion of it. When they waste too much energy on unimportant things, they no longer have enough strength to face what truly matters. A person with emotional stability is not someone who never gets tired, but someone who chooses what is worth getting tired for. They do not waste energy on pointless arguments, on provocative small matters, or on people who do not understand them. They reserve their energy for big decisions, meaningful work, and valuable relationships. This discernment not only protects emotions but strengthens their character. Another important part of emotional foundation is environment. People are influenced not only by what they think but by what they encounter every day. A noisy, chaotic, negative environment pulls them into a constant state of tension. They react more, defend more, and lose calm more easily. When the environment changes, the quality of emotions changes. A tidy, quiet space relaxes the mind. An orderly workspace sharpens thinking. A group of people with aligned values stabilizes the spirit. People cannot change everything around them, but they can choose what they allow into their lives. Emotional foundation is also built through consistent mental habits. Each habit is like a brick added to the foundation. When a person meditates for 5 minutes each day, they train their mind to return to center instead of being pulled into impulses. When they write down their thoughts, they release pressure before it accumulates into strong reactions. When they take breaks from screens, they give their nervous system a chance to rest from information overload. When they spend time reading, learning, or doing things that nourish their intellect, they expand their ability to see life from a deeper perspective. All these practices together create the ability to stand firm even when life challenges them. Part of emotional stability lies in setting boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, but signals that show others how far they can go. Without boundaries, people become easily dragged into drama, pressure, and responsibilities that are not theirs. With boundaries, they protect their time, energy, and peace. Clear boundaries stabilize emotions because they prevent anger from being triggered by overstepping and disappointment from unmet expectations. Boundaries are not given by others. They are built by oneself. And when built with respect and calmness, they not only protect a person but elevate how they appear in the eyes of others. A stable emotional foundation also requires people to be honest with themselves. They must dare to look at unresolved fears, unhealed wounds, and old habits pulling them down. This honesty is not for self-criticism, but for self-understanding. When they see what is truly happening inside, they can begin to change it. Stability does not come from avoidance, but from facing truth and working through it with patience and maturity. When people build a strong emotional foundation, they notice life becomes less shaky. Things that once made them lose control now only make them pause and think before moving on. People who once hurt them now only remind them that they do not need to participate in those stories anymore. Situations that once frightened them now become opportunities to show growth. They are no longer carried by the chaotic current of the world, but walk at their own steady rhythm. And when their steps become steady, life begins to shift in ways they never expected. Pressure is not the enemy as many people believe, but the stage that reveals each person's level of preparation. When pressure appears, it does not create a new version of someone but simply exposes what has existed within them all along. Those without foundation collapse. Those with foundation stand firm. Those who have prepared thoroughly rise, and those who are truly mature use pressure as a tool to expand their inner capacity. In life, many people see pressure as a threat, a sign of failure, or evidence that they are not good enough. But that is only the perspective of a mind that has not been recalibrated. In truth, pressure is like weight in a gym. No one can lift heavier weights if they do not dare to touch them. No one can expand mental strength if they do not dare to stand in difficult moments. Pressure comes to measure, not to break. It measures whether a person has prepared enough, how serious they truly are about themselves, and whether they are ready to step into a more mature version. When someone learns to see pressure through the lens of growth, they no longer fear it. They understand that pressure shows up when life wants to see whether they truly desire what they claim to want. Many people declare they want to grow, to be steady, to be strong, but when pressure arrives, they panic. This is not wrong, but it reveals that their declarations are still theoretical. Pressure turns theory into reality. Pressure turns words into action. Pressure turns desire into commitment. That is why not everyone can handle pressure, but those who can inevitably grow beyond measure. Pressure also serves another purpose. It forces people to confront the parts they usually avoid. When life is calm, the mind easily overlooks small weaknesses, bad habits, and unhealed wounds. But when pressure hits, every crack becomes visible. A person with a tendency toward anger will lose their temper. A person lacking discipline will retreat. A person lacking confidence will fear. A person dependent on praise will feel wounded. Pressure does not create these weaknesses. It illuminates them. And through this illumination, people finally see what they must train. Pressure exposes truth, but that truth opens the door to growth. Those who dare face that truth grow faster than anyone else. Those who avoid it repeat the same lesson until they learn. And life will always patiently deliver exactly the test a person needs to grow. When pressure is viewed correctly, it is no longer an obstacle but a strict yet fair teacher. This teacher never grades based on emotion. It simply reflects one's level of effort and preparation. When someone prepares well, pressure cannot break them. When they have not prepared, pressure does not even need to attack. They will collapse on their own. But the miracle is that each time they rise after pressure, they become stronger. No inner transformation journey exists without pressure. No true maturity exists without touching old limits. Pressure is where the old identity is tested so the new identity can be born. When people dare stand within pressure, instead of running from it, they begin to change. They begin to understand that emotions do not define who they are. Their actions under pressure do. They begin to see that they can be calm even when everything around them is chaotic. They begin to recognize that within them exists a part untouched by circumstances. Pressure not only tests one's ability to face difficulty, but also tests their ability to remain themselves. A person is only truly mature when they remain who they are even in the hardest situations. And to achieve that, they need preparation, emotional foundation, self-understanding, boundaries, and daily training in calmness. Pressure is not a separate moment but a test of consistency from all the days before it. Those who collapse easily do not fall because pressure is too great, but because they have ignored preparation for too long. Those who stand firm are not superior. They simply built such a solid foundation that no pressure has the strength to destroy it. Pressure also teaches an important lesson about self-trust. When people withstand pressure, they no longer doubt their own worth. Confidence does not come from encouragement, but from standing firm in a situation where their old self would have fallen. There is no evidence more powerful than evidence from one's own experience. When someone overcomes an inner challenge, they return to a fundamental truth that they can trust themselves. And when people trust themselves, pressure no longer frightens them. They know that each moment of enduring is a moment of growth. Each moment of standing firm brings them closer to the powerful version they are building. Pressure does not disappear as people mature, but as people mature, they see pressure differently. no longer as an enemy but as a test, proving that their inner strength is increasing. And once they learn this lesson, life no longer intimidates them as it once did. Pain is not a sign of weakness, but proof that a person is still alive, still feeling, still desiring something important enough to hurt. Within the depth of every pain lies a fragment of message that life sends to awaken a person from old cycles. The mistake many people make is spending their whole lives avoiding pain, trying everything to not feel it, without realizing that what they run from is the very doorway to the inner strength they seek. When people avoid pain, they do not only avoid discomfort, but also avoid the opportunity to grow. And when they avoid long enough, pain does not disappear. It only changes form and returns stronger. Only when they dare to face pain can they transform it into strength. Pain has 4 main forms, each carrying a core energy. Anger is the energy of boundaries. Fear is the energy of preparation. Sadness is the energy of depth and connection. Disappointment is the energy of perseverance and restructuring. When people see pain as merely negative, they lose the ability to harness its raw power. But when they see it as raw material, they learn how to use pain to rebuild themselves. Anger is often seen as a dangerous emotion, but its essence is a warning that someone's boundaries are being violated. When a person becomes angry, it is not because they want to attack, but because they feel unseen, disrespected, or cornered for too long. Anger reminds them to stand up, to reset limits, to protect their values. When they learn to turn anger into boundaries, their life begins to have structure. Fear, on the other hand, is not the destroyer of confidence, but the force that draws attention to areas lacking preparation. Fear says something important is ahead that current capacity cannot yet meet. It pushes people to practice, learn, and prepare better. The strongest individuals are not those without fear, but those who use fear as the reason to upgrade themselves. Thus, fear is not a weakness, but a signal to become sharper. Sadness carries another kind of energy. Sadness is not only loss, but the purification of the inner world. Sadness makes people stop and face what they have tried to forget. Sadness opens deeper layers that happiness does not reveal. Sadness helps them connect with their real feelings, making them more sensitive and compassionate. Those who have walked through sadness possess a depth and understanding that those who have never experienced it cannot. Sadness does not come to destroy, but to teach a more mature way to love. Disappointment is the final form of pain, but also the strongest. Disappointment appears when results do not meet expectations. It hurts because it touches belief, but disappointment is also the force that makes people examine their inner structure. It forces them to review their preparation, perseverance, and clarity. It teaches that progress is not linear but spiral. Those who rise after disappointment are those who can rebuild their identity from foundation to structure. When they turn disappointment into determination, they become nearly undefeatable. Pain, in its deepest form, is an invitation to return to oneself. Not the weak version, but the true version. When people dare to sit with their pain, they cut away layers of illusion they built to protect their ego. They see clearly what truly matters, what must leave, and what must be rebuilt. Pain brings absolute honesty, and that honesty is the foundation of inner strength. When pain is transformed, people begin building a new architecture of inner power. This structure is not built on avoidance but understanding, not on control but direction, not on tension but inner freedom. One of the first signs of this new structure is the ability to remain calm in situations that once broke them. When they realize that what once hurt them now only makes them pause to reflect, they know they have grown. Another sign is that they are no longer afraid of being hurt. Not because they are numb, but because they know that even if pain arrives, they can rise again. They trust in their ability to recover, and this trust is stronger than any encouragement. The new inner structure also shows in the way people no longer react from old patterns. They do not explode in anger, do not run from fear, do not sink into sadness longer than necessary, and do not let disappointment pull them backward. They face, they process, they transform, Pain is no longer a trap, but a toolkit for refining identity. A person who knows how to transform pain is no longer controlled by life. They become someone who uses every experience, no matter how difficult, to build a stronger version of themselves. And when a person reaches this level, they do not merely continue living, they live with a strength, depth, and presence that life itself cannot ignore. No environment tests human emotion as intensely as relationships. In relationships, people do not only face the words of another person, but also the unhealed wounds within themselves. A single careless comment can trigger an old pain. A small action can revive the memory of abandonment. A silence at the wrong moment can send the mind into spirals of overthinking. Relationships, therefore, are not just interactions, but places where the emotional maturity of each person is revealed. Emotional intelligence in relationships is not about avoiding conflict, but about staying calm within conflict. Conflict is not a sign of a bad relationship, but a sign that two individuals are close enough to touch each other's unfinished parts. A person with emotional intelligence does not try to win an argument, they try to understand. They understand that hurtful words do not come from malice, but from unprocessed pain. They understand that silence is not always indifference, but sometimes overwhelm. They understand that the person in front of them is not fighting them, but fighting something inside themselves. With that understanding, they stop reacting emotionally and begin responding with presence. One of the biggest reasons relationships break is that people do not speak their true feelings. They are angry but say they are fine. They are hurt but say it is nothing. They need to be heard but stay silent out of fear of being misunderstood. This silence becomes distance. Distance becomes misunderstanding. Misunderstanding becomes deeper hurt. Emotional intelligence does not require people to express everything immediately, but requires them to know clearly what they are feeling, why they feel that way, and how they need to be treated to feel safe. When they understand themselves, they can communicate clearly. Many people enter conversations to defend their ego, but a person with emotional intelligence enters to protect the relationship. This does not mean they tolerate or excuse wrongdoing. It means they do not let ego overshadow what truly matters: connection. They know that every conflict has two layers. The surface layer is the event. The deeper layer is the emotion. The surface layer is about who was right or wrong, what happened, who said what and how. But the deeper layer is the real reason behind the pain. A person is not angry because a glass of water spilled, but because they feel uncared for. A person is not hurt by a short reply, but because they feel unvalued. A person is not sad because dinner was cancelled, but because they feel they are not a priority. When people communicate only at the surface, they keep arguing about things that do not matter. But when they reach the deeper layer, everything becomes clearer. And conflict becomes an opportunity to grow closer rather than drift apart. Staying calm during conflict is not natural. It is a skill that must be trained. When conflict arises, the human instinct is to defend, justify, or attack. But these reactions usually make the situation worse. Calmness begins with pausing to observe oneself. The heartbeat is rising, the voice is getting louder, the mind is preparing its counterattack. In that moment, if a person can choose to stand on the side of the relationship rather than the side of the ego, the outcome changes. Calmness is not silent endurance, but silence used to understand. When someone remains calm, they create a safe space for the other person to lower their defenses. In that space, both can speak honestly, listen genuinely, and heal truly. A person without emotional intelligence wants to be right. A person with emotional intelligence wants to understand and be understood. When they understand, they connect. When they connect, they build. When they build, the relationship grows. Emotional intelligence in relationships does not eliminate all conflict. It simply guides conflict in the right direction. Instead of destroying, it clarifies what is important. Instead of pushing apart, it brings closer. Instead of causing harm, it creates growth. A lasting relationship is not one without disagreement, but one where each disagreement becomes a bridge. And that bridge is built with calmness, patience, observation, and honest emotional expression. When people mature in the way they communicate, they do not only change their relationships, they also change their own emotional world. They stop expecting others to read their minds. They stop holding unrealistic expectations that relationships must be perfect. They begin seeing each interaction as an opportunity to understand themselves and others more deeply. And from that understanding, they build deeper, stronger, more meaningful connections. A person with emotional intelligence does not see relationships as places to seek perfection, but as places to grow. They enter with an open heart and a clear mind. They do not avoid emotional waves, but they know how to ride them without being drowned. And because of that, their presence brings peace into any relationship they walk into. Throughout life, what shapes a person is not what others say to them, but what they say to themselves when no one is watching. The inner voice is like a silent current, continuously whispering stories about one's worth, abilities, and future. Yet most people do not realize that this voice is not absolute truth. It is merely the accumulation of memories, experiences, wounds, and beliefs formed from the past. When someone has never observed their inner dialogue, they live as if every thought arising inside is true. They believe it when it tells them they are not good enough. They believe it when it tells them they will fail. They believe it when it tells them they do not deserve happiness or success. And each time they believe it, they imprison themselves in the old version of who they are. Inner dialogue, when left unexamined, becomes an invisible prison. But when correctly identified, it becomes the doorway to freedom. All deep transformation begins with observing the inner voice. When a person learns to listen without identifying with it, they realize that many of the stories they carry were not created by them but inherited from old experiences. A childhood criticism can become a self-belittling voice. A painful failure can become an overprotective warning that stops them from trying again. An emotional shock can become a siren that rings every time they face something new. These voices are not enemies. They are the childlike parts within each person trying to protect them from future harm. But without resetting, these voices will keep them locked in the safety zone of fear. Resetting inner dialogue means rewriting these old stories so they no longer control behavior. The first step is recognition. When a negative thought appears, instead of letting it pull them down, they must ask whether it is truth or just a reaction from the past. A simple question creates distance between them and the thought, and that distance is where freedom begins. When people question their inner voice, they stop being led by it and start leading it. The second step is replacing the language. Language does not just describe a state, it creates it. When someone says they have failed, the mind closes. When they say they are learning, the mind opens. When they say they cannot, the body tightens. When they say they are progressing, the body regains energy. Every word spoken in the mind carries energy, and that energy shapes emotion, action, and even the future. Therefore, resetting inner dialogue means resetting the language, not fake positivity but accurate, empowering language. Instead of saying, "I cannot," an emotionally mature person says, "I am learning how to do this." Instead of saying, "I am terrible," they say, "I need more practice." Instead of saying, "Everything is against me," they say, "I have an opportunity to become stronger." Language is the tool that restructures emotion. The third step is repetition. The brain does not change because of a single new thought. It changes when new thoughts are repeated long enough to form new neural pathways. Each time a person chooses a new thought over an old one, they strengthen the new mental structure. And one day, the thought that once felt like effort becomes a natural reflex. That is when a new identity forms. A person who knows how to reset inner dialogue is not someone with fewer negative thoughts, but someone who refuses to let those thoughts define them. They listen but do not obey. They observe but do not identify. They choose thoughts that strengthen them rather than weaken them. and they repeat that choice until their entire inner world is rebuilt with clarity and stability. Inner dialogue is where people define themselves. If the inside is full of old stories, they will live as a wounded version of their past. But if they rebuild their inner language with calmness, patience, and truth, they will become the powerful version waiting to emerge. When inner dialogue changes, everything changes. The mind becomes clearer, emotions become more stable, relationships become healthier, and life begins to open in a new direction. Not because the external world changed, but because the internal perspective was renewed. One of the clearest signs of a renewed identity is when a person no longer speaks to themselves with harshness. They become fair with themselves, as if speaking to someone they respect. They neither glorify nor belittle themselves. They face truth, but with maturity, not judgment. When someone reaches that point, they do not just heal, they are reborn. And from that new inner voice emerges a version of themselves that is steadier, wiser, and capable of creating the life they truly desire. One of the strongest forms of bondage humans face does not come from the outside world, but from the need for validation. This need operates quietly like an invisible thread, guiding behavior, emotions, and decisions without people realizing it. It makes them live through the eyes of others, adjust themselves according to others' expectations, and feel their worth rise or fall depending on external approval. When praised, they feel valuable. When criticized, they feel inferior. When acknowledged, they feel enough. When ignored, they feel invisible. Life in that state is no longer an inner journey, but a stage where they must constantly perform to keep their place in the minds of others. There is no life more exhausting than living to please everyone. And no path leads to weakness faster than letting one's worth depend on external judgment. People must understand that the need for validation is not inherently bad. It is a primal instinct tied to human survival. But when this instinct goes unregulated, it turns into a psychological prison. Liberation from this need does not mean rejecting all recognition, but reclaiming the authority to define one's own worth. When people understand that validation is not the source of value, but merely an external reflection of it, they begin stepping into freedom. A person who constantly seeks validation is someone who has not yet truly seen themselves. They see themselves through the shifting lenses of others and become trapped in constantly changing perceptions. Today they are praised, tomorrow they are criticized. Today they are admired, tomorrow they are questioned. The lens of society always shifts. And if people rely on it to define their worth, they will never find stability. Emotionally mature individuals understand that true worth does not come from the crowd, but from the alignment between one's actions and one's principles. When a person lives according to their values, they do not need anyone to validate whether they are on the right path. When they stray from their values, they do not need anyone to criticize them to know it is time to realign. A new sense of self is built when people learn to stand firm in their own fairness toward themselves. An important part of releasing the need for validation lies in the ability to withstand being misunderstood. People often explain, justify, or prove themselves because they fear being seen incorrectly. But the truth is, no one is obligated to understand them completely. Not because the world is unkind, but because everyone sees through the lens of their own experience. There will always be someone who misunderstands. There will always be someone who misjudges. There will always be someone who sees one fragment and assumes they know the entire story. True strength does not lie in making everyone understand you, but in remaining steady when you are misunderstood. A strong person is not someone loved by all, but someone who does not collapse when misperceived. When people learn to release the need to be seen correctly, they unlock a profound freedom. The freedom to be authentic. The freedom to speak truthfully. The freedom to choose what is right instead of what is praised. The freedom to walk their own path without being pulled off course by others' opinions. One of the clearest signs of a mature sense of self is the ability to act based on values rather than the desire for validation. When they do what is right, they do not need an audience. When they pursue their goals, they do not need applause. When they protect themselves, they do not need agreement. This independence is not rebellion but stability at the core. When people stop living for validation, they begin feeling power from within. Every decision becomes clearer. Every relationship becomes lighter. Every challenge becomes easier to navigate. They no longer react out of fear of judgment, but respond from knowing what is right. The new sense of self is not built through display, but through quiet strength. It does not need to prove itself. It appears through the way a person stands, speaks, stays calm, faces difficulty, and respects themselves. The stillness of a renewed self is more powerful than any declaration. When people release the need for validation, they naturally become more respected, because nothing is more magnetic than someone who does not need attention to exist. Such a person does not seek acceptance, they embody it. They do not seek admiration, they radiate steadiness. They do not need to be seen, they are the presence that makes others see themselves more clearly. Releasing the need for validation does not make people cold, it makes them free. And in that freedom, they finally meet the version of themselves they have long searched for outside, but that has always lived within. There is a depth within every human being that even they rarely touch, a silent space beneath noisy thoughts, beneath chaotic emotions, beneath endless desires. It is the soul level, where a person is no longer defined by success or failure, by praise or criticism, by fear or ambition, but by the pure presence of who they are. Most people live their entire lives without ever entering this level, not because they lack the capacity, but because life is too loud to allow them to hear the call from within. They chase work, chase responsibilities, chase expectations, chase the image they believe the world wants from them, and in that chase, they lose the path back to their own soul. But when the journey of emotional mastery has gone far enough, when inner dialogue has been reset, when the need for validation has been released, a door begins to open. It is the door that leads inward to the soul. The soul level does not arrive through noise, it arrives through stillness. Stillness is not an external condition, but an internal state. A person can sit in a quiet room while the mind remains chaotic, or they can stand in a busy street while their soul remains peaceful. Stillness is not the absence of sound, but the absence of inner conflict. When a person enters this level, they begin to feel something they once believed existed only in books. That they are not their emotions, not their thoughts, not the story they once told about themselves. They are the still point observing all of that. They are the sky, not the clouds. They are the ocean, not the waves. And the moment they realize this, their strength transforms entirely. In the soul level, people understand that external turbulence is only temporary challenge. They no longer need to fight everything. They only need to stand firm in their inner stillness and let everything pass. Like the eye of a hurricane, where everything around spins violently, yet the center remains impossibly calm. A person who finds their inner stillness has found the eye of the storm within their own life. Storms may rise, hardships may appear, pressure may fall, but they are no longer swept into emotional spirals. They observe, they feel, they respond, but they do not drown. This peace is not avoidance, but a profound recognition that everything is impermanent. Emotions are impermanent. Circumstances are impermanent. People are impermanent. And because everything is impermanent, they no longer need to control everything. They only need to live with full presence. When someone steps deeply into the soul level, they begin to understand that most human suffering does not come from events, but from trying to force life to follow their expectations. They want others to match their ideals. They want the environment to operate according to their beliefs. They want everything to unfold according to plan. This resistance to reality creates inner conflict, but when they accept that life has its own rhythm, that some things require time, that some things must fall away for others to arise, they loosen their grip, and in loosening, they stop fighting life and begin walking with it. One of the clearest signs of the soul level is the ability to let go. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is no longer clinging to what no longer fits. It is understanding that whatever leaves has its reason. It is trusting that whatever belongs to them will return at the right moment. When people learn to let go, they are no longer bound by old relationships, old expectations, old failures. They step into the present with a lightness they never knew before. The soul level also opens a deep connection with oneself. When people listen long enough, they begin to distinguish between the voice of intuition and the voice of fear. Intuition is gentle yet certain. Fear is loud and hurried. Intuition leads toward what is right. Fear pulls toward what is familiar. When they learn to trust intuition, they begin making decisions that lead them to the highest version of themselves, not the easiest path, but the truest one. The soul level also gives rise to a new kind of strength, the strength of presence. A present person does not need to prove, display, or try to influence. Their inner stability naturally creates its own gravity. Others feel peace when they walk into a room, not because they speak loudly, but because they hold stillness even when the world is chaotic. And that stillness spreads like an energy field. When someone lives at the soul level, they no longer seek perfection outside. They seek authenticity within. They no longer compare themselves to others. They compare themselves to who they were yesterday, and in doing so, they enter a kind of freedom they once thought impossible. Freedom from fear, freedom from expectation, freedom from judgment, freedom from the rigid ego, and this freedom becomes the foundation of long-lasting peace. When a person finds the still point in their soul, life's storms no longer frighten them. They know how to stand, they know how to let the storm pass, and when the storm is gone, they remain themselves, even stronger than before. Inner transformation only becomes true strength when it is integrated into daily life. A person may understand emotions, the brain, pain, calmness, and the soul level, but if that understanding does not become habit, it will disappear the moment pressure appears. Integration is the crucial bridge that turns knowledge into ability, awareness into action, and awakening into intentional living. Many people fail not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack a system that keeps them aligned. An intentional life system is the framework that keeps a person steady when emotions fluctuate, when the environment is chaotic, or when the mind is exhausted. A system does not create perfection, but it creates consistency, and consistency is what determines long-term growth. Real integration begins with the understanding that emotions do not appear randomly, but are shaped by the rhythms one repeats every day. A person who wakes up late, skips breakfast, lives in clutter, reacts instantly to every notification, and lets their day drift under the pull of their phone will naturally be more prone to emotional reactivity. Meanwhile, a person who designs their day with intentional rhythms creates emotional buffers. A quiet morning, a few minutes of breathing, a clear list of priorities, a clean environment, a dedicated focus space, all combine to create stability that emotions cannot easily shake. Integrating practice means turning calmness into habit, not temporary reaction. When someone practices pausing before reacting, observing before interpreting, breathing before stressing, reframing before discouraging themselves, they build an automatic structure within. This structure functions even when they are tired, under pressure, or momentarily lost. An intentional life system is built from three core elements: daily rhythm, environment, and emotional discipline. Rhythm is how people allocate their time and energy throughout the day. A person with a healthy rhythm always sets aside at least one daily moment to reconnect with themselves. It may be the morning before the world grows loud, or the evening after everything settles. That moment creates a pocket of stillness where they return to their inner center and remind themselves to live by values instead of impulses. Environment is a factor many overlook, but it deeply affects emotions. A chaotic environment pulls emotions into chaos. A structured environment pulls emotions toward clarity. A clean workspace, balanced lighting, gentle sound, items in their proper place, all create a sense of safety for the nervous system. When the nervous system feels safe, emotions stabilize. When emotions stabilize, actions become steady. Emotional discipline is the deepest element, not surface discipline like forcing oneself to complete tasks, but inner discipline like choosing calm when emotions want to erupt, choosing silence when the ego wants to argue, choosing movement when fear wants to hold them back, choosing continuation when disappointment wants to pull them down. Emotional discipline is not self-suppression but self-respect. When someone chooses to respond rather than react, they are telling themselves that their value is too great to be compromised by fleeting moments. An intentional life system also requires reorganizing priorities. Many people hand their lives over to others, letting unexpected requests, casual favors, and social pressure dictate their direction. A person living intentionally knows what matters and what does not. They place priority on what nourishes peace, health, wisdom, healthy relationships, and long-term goals. Everything else enters only if it does not disrupt those priorities. A key habit in integration is daily self-review, not for self-criticism but for alignment. A simple question like, "Did I live by my values or my emotions today?" is enough to pull someone back to their center. When they do this daily, they never drift too far. Integration also requires removing what no longer fits. Draining relationships, energy-stealing habits, goals that no longer hold, meaning all must be placed on the table for re-evaluation. When someone holds on to old things that no longer align, they leave no room for new things to enter. An intentional system cannot be built on a chaotic foundation. It needs clearing, clarity, and acceptance that growth sometimes means letting parts of oneself go. Integrating practice is not a sudden change but a continuous evolution. A little each day, a little each decision, a little each moment of pause. This accumulation creates a major shift that only becomes visible in hindsight. One day, they will find themselves calm in situations that once made them panic. They will find themselves clear in situations that once overwhelmed their mind. They will find themselves light in situations that once weighed heavily on their heart. That is when they realize they have built a life system stronger than emotions, stronger than circumstances, stronger than the old self. Once the system is formed, life can no longer easily pull them away. They do not live by impulses but by values. They do not chase chaos but walk by their own rhythm. They do not look for stability outside but generate it from within. And this stability prepares them for the final transition of the journey, where they do not just change themselves but step into a new timeline of their life. There is a moment in life when a person realizes they no longer want to live the way they used to. Not because life has become too difficult, but because they have become too big to remain in the old version of themselves. Everything they have learned, experienced, and practiced throughout this journey leads to a single point, that life only changes when a person changes the way they show up in it. Stepping into a new timeline is not an external event, but an inner ritual, where a person decides to leave behind their old version and stand in the version they have built through clarity, calmness, discipline, and maturity. It is the moment they no longer try to control the world around them, but focus on controlling how they respond. No longer letting emotions dictate actions, but letting actions shape emotions. No longer hoping others will understand them, but choosing to understand themselves first. No longer living by impulses, but living by values. A new timeline begins when a person realizes they do not need miracles to change their life. They only need consistent choices. They only need to hold stillness even when the world grows loud. They only need to pause before reacting. Choose calm before anger. Choose understanding before judgment. Choose forward movement before discouragement. When they do this long enough, their life shifts onto a different trajectory. Stepping into a new version of themselves does not mean abandoning weakness, but refusing to let weakness dictate direction. It does not mean being strong at all times, but knowing how to rise after every fall without losing trust in oneself. It does not mean becoming perfect, but becoming authentic, steady, and deep. And when a person reaches this state, they begin to show up in life with a different kind of energy. It is the kind of energy that makes others automatically adjust their rhythm when they stand near. The kind of energy that quiets conflict, clarifies interactions, and attracts good opportunities naturally. They do not need to say much because their presence carries weight. Not the weight of force, but the weight of inner stability. Life changes when a person holds this energy long enough for it to become their nature. From this point forward, they no longer ask what life will bring to them, but what they will bring to life. No longer ask what others think of them, but who they are becoming. No longer ask whether they are strong enough, but understand that strength does not mean being without fear, but continuing despite fear. When a person reaches this point, the journey does not end. It simply moves into a new chapter. A chapter where they walk with calmness, live with clarity, and exist with the steadiness they have spent the entire journey building. And in that powerful stillness, they realize they have truly stepped into the new timeline of their life. You have just completed a journey not to become someone else, but to return to the strongest version of yourself that has been sleeping within you. Everything you heard today is a map guiding you out of unconscious reactions, rebuilding your emotional foundation, transforming pain into strength, staying calm in conflict, resetting your inner voice, and stepping into a new timeline with a presence that carries real weight. If you are still here, it means a part of you is truly ready to change, ready to stand stronger, see clearer, and live more freely within your own life. Thank you for taking the time to listen and walk with me to the end of this journey. If this content resonated with you, please support by liking, sharing, and subscribing so you do not miss the next stories. Your support helps me continue creating deeper journeys to share with you every day. See you in the next video.